So that's a big night. All right, so I'll call the meeting to order, the zoning bylaw committee for May 8th. Roll call is here. Clark,
River here.
me, and Cassandra, Kate and Cassie.
Here, I see here.
Yeah, okay. Had an email and automatic response that she was out of her office today. So anyway, getting into the agenda, I don't know how much we'll cover without the group, but we'll get some guidance here tonight. But we have a lot to cover. I'm not sure what town meeting I'm getting vibes that town meetings scheduled in the fall might be all. They might not do two of them, which I originally thought, which is a financial one in September and the normal one in December. So, we may only be able to get part of it, what we need to do done by the fall, but we'll forge on and try to deal with the easy stuff, easier stuff. So won't discuss town meeting. I just said to Clark before, thank you for everybody, for their support. So we got through it. Sweat the quorum, but we got through it. And
All approvals, right?
yeah. I mean, my own, always seeing a dark cloud, even in a good thing. I just, there were people who were, at previous meetings who I wish that, if they had questions, to ask them then, but whatever, we got through it. We didn't have
But no
any
surprises, kind of the standard voices.
Yeah, there was one surprise when somebody tried to throw the curveball of a quorum count, but not a big deal. But we had one voice vote, right, Clark, and the rest were unanimous. So we had two amendments in Article 6 about the signs, and again, they were two people who had been to previous meetings and didn't point it out, and they were things that existed in our bylaw today that we were just carrying over. So we did the amendments and we changed them. One Cassie might be interested in was about the setback for a sign in the village is 15 feet. And it's been in our existing bylaw since the village bylaw was done 16 years ago. Nobody's ever complained about it, but we changed it. So, or if we didn't change it, we're going, we said we'd look at it when we do the dimension. There was one other small change, but it wasn't significant. So again, we got through it, and next time we just got to make sure we're earlier in the meeting so that we don't have to sweat the quorum.
Yeah,
right,
it sounds like the town hall, and it sounded like it was a long meeting.
Yeah, we were all wrapped up. Everything got wrapped up by 10:30, which wasn't too bad, but what did they say? There was 336 people there, and so the vote on the town hall was in the 150s versus the 170s. I think it was 158 to 179, something like that.
I think town hall.
And then a ton of people.
An hour.
Yeah, and then a ton of people left. And then there's, Clark pointed out, I wasn't even paying attention at that point. There was a vote on eliminating the kindergarten tuition. So once that voted, then another chunk of people left. But we clearly had over 100.
And I said, yay! I have a kindergartner starting next year.
Yeah,
Big score.
Yeah, I guess I knew that they were charging for kindergarten, but it is a public school, so I don't know why. But be that as it may.
In other towns, it's free, right, Clark?
Yeah, that's right. And actually, the main reason is by providing free kindergarten, you get grants from the state, which more than pays for whoever was paying tuition.
Yeah. All right,
so why not do it?
Well, once that went through, then then the meeting kind of halved again. So it was close, but we were okay. So.
Well, why can't zoning bylaws be at the beginning? You could say they went last time. Can we go on? Although special town meeting, there's really only a couple of articles. One time we got it done in 17 minutes. So
yeah, I mean, I keep pointing out to people that the original bylaw in 1955 was a special town meeting, but
you have brought that up before.
Yeah, and you know,
But only 6 or 7 times, Tom.
but at the last meeting, our last meeting when we were preparing for this, I said out loud that I had been told we would be moved up. And Jack didn't say we weren't being moved up. Then I came to find out when the warrant was being finalized that we were number 20 through 25, and I was prepared to file a motion to advance everything, and then, you know, the select board put the kibosh on that, so.
Well, I think it worked out okay. I mean,
Yeah, it worked
so
out, but I-
exhausted and sick of listening to everybody that really, I mean, I think that's sort of an advantage for passage.
Yeah, I just wish, you know, sometimes I wish that there was, you know, given the town meeting only had 330 people to begin with, it's be nice to have a broader mandate of support, you know, so people. And I've commented on social media since that I just think a lot of people just don't give us a damn beyond issues of their own immediate import at the moment. And that's unfortunate, but that's been town meeting ever since I've lived here. We, you know,
Well,
back in the days when we had school budget fights, once the school budget was voted, the room would empty out, you know, so.
It's also an epidemic of our culture at this particular time.
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is. So anyway, let's do what we can do here. The first thing on the agenda for moving forward for the fall was, I guess I'll leave that to the larger group about commissioning various studies. I think that we need the input of the larger group. Regarding our membership, since we're here struggling for a quorum, I am going to reach out to the zoning board again. I want to give it one more time to have them have a representative on this committee. I have asked both soon-to-be former select persons. And, you know, if anybody else knows anybody else, I mean, I could put it out there on 143 too. I might just do that because I really think it helps, you know, for nights like this when we have a lot of progress to make, to have a full board or close to it. So we're not sitting here sweating a quorum or anything. And I feel like, you know, the three of us could make decisions, but I feel like
We can.
we can, but I feel like we're not, you know, having a wider consensus is always better. Anyway, let's go to the housing choice zoning, since we do have to deal
Well,
with that.
we're past height, Tom, so there's nothing to worry about now.
No, there's lots of things to worry about. So the next thing is housing choice. So let's talk about that a little bit. So we do have to deal with this year. Currently, the state is requiring us to zone for 638 units as of right over the expanse of 43 acres of land. That is approximately 19% of our total housing stock. For whatever reason, and if Lauren was here, she could explain it. You know, the 15% is the limit of the legislation, but somehow our calculations work out to 19%. It's a biggie. So I've gone ahead and looked at most logical place being on 3A. We can do
When we
this.
talked about this before, didn't we say putting Avalon in there and
Well, here,
maybe the Rosano site?
Yeah, let me share the screen here to start. I can't do two documents on my screen.
Rosano's only done site work. I'm sure if he could do housing on that
Oh,
site,
I
he would
think,
put his building somewhere else.
yeah, I think that's an ideal site, and I think with the density, that could get something like 120 units on it. Anyway,
Right, but there's also some extra capacity at the former Avalon, which is like the preserve now or whatever.
right.
They
So,
can fit another 50 units in there, but it really doesn't matter. The 220 units that count, and an additional 50 units plus Rosano, we're really close to being at the number, right?
Well, and I thought
um,
they need that space though at the preserve, Clark, I thought, for a reservoir. I don't think they have capacity there, right? They'd have to build another system.
No, I think they do have extra space for additional units at the preserve.
But they would need more sewer.
No,
They
they have been like running at like 40% of capacity. They have excess capacity.
Okay.
all right. Damn it, you know what? I'm gonna stop that share and I'm gonna screen share
No, wait,
something.
years ago, we had a number of meetings with Scott Dale from Avalon.
Yeah,
And he did a
Yeah.
preliminary design and everything, but they decided in the middle that they were gonna sell. That and
Yeah.
a bunch of other properties to capitalize future projects. So we
Yeah.
didn't hear anything, and I understood from Lauren. I actually talked to Lauren about it at town meeting, before town meeting started, and she said, yeah, there were preliminary discussions with a new owner, but expanding there wasn't a priority for the new owner.
right.
But it's
Right.
still possible to do that, and from a zoning perspective. Anyway, go
They,
ahead. You
yeah,
wanted to talk.
they originally, I think, wanted 250 units and ended up with 200, so there's space, but,
No. They started with 200. We asked them to go to 220. But
okay.
there's additional space and sewer capacity for another 50, maybe even more.
Yeah. Well, so here's a list I had come up with going around the station. Now, when I first compiled this list, I thought everything had to be pretty much within a half mile of the station. What the actual regulations are saying and the guidelines are that at least 20% of the projects of the zoning has to be within a half mile of the station. So that's why I didn't include Avalon, but we could certainly include Avalon.
Yeah, I would think that would, I mean, putting Avalon in means we're not potentially experiencing tremendous growth. We're just counting.
Yeah, but Lauren and I discussed this, and I wish I remembered the answer, and we'll have to ask her again, but I'm not sure. She did a presentation on this, by
Yeah,
the way, that I
course.
don't have the copy of.
remember it.
She's already done one to the select board and everything, but since she did that one, they've come out with more guidelines on what we're doing. They even come out with some model suggestions for bylaw. But anyway,
Yeah.
I had identified, as you can see, I had identified here, as you can see, 155 acres. Now, we need to zone for 43 acres, but again, because of septic, sewer, and all that other thing, and wetlands and all of that, you know, it can't just be 43 on the nose. So there is,
Athanasium's not on there because of the existing septic, I assume.
which one?
Like 226.
I don't think that necessarily is a critical thing. If the
I didn't go in that direction.
sewer capacity might not be available on a site.
Well, I see 231.
Where's 231?
Where's 226?
I didn't go on that side of the street. I was
Oh.
trying to identify properties that made sense for this, but
Okay.
I can. We can add whatever, we can put in the zoning, whatever we want. So I'm just showing you some preliminary things of what I did here. So 55.8 acres up near the train station, our train station without Avalon. Avalon's another 42 acres. And then down on the south side of town, because we can also go in proximity to the North Situate station.
Right.
And there's another 16 there. Most of that is commercial zone, except the one property that is owned on Marion Way. And then further down there, these are two things on Chief Justice Cushing, and 274B Beechwood is Wayne's property, which is half residential and half highway business. The property doesn't have access to 3A, and nor does it, only has 40 feet on the end of the cul-de-sac of Pine Ridge Road. But so I mentioned in the agenda that I got an inquiry. Apparently the Shaw's Plaza and a couple of properties south of it are all owned by one company, and it's possibly under agreement. And so an inquiry was made about, you know, what we're looking at towards this housing choice zoning. And the south side of 3A has its own attractiveness because there's a little more open space, and so you wouldn't be displacing as much existing commercial uses, but it's totaled up, you know, so I didn't include the Shaw's property, but so that made, you know, this is what, 23, 24 acres. It might bring it up another 4 or 5 acres, but so we have a good pots of possibilities on both sides.
Well, Tom, is the philosophy to try to comply with the requirements to a minimal extent, or where we would see some growth?
No, I think
or to, a more liberal or extensive growth possibility? Because
I think
another factor in all this is the sewer, the regional sewer system.
correct, and
Which may or
that's
may not go down 3A, but the
Right.
state is the state can green light sending that pipe down 3A, and then Cohasset doesn't have as much control.
Yeah, Dave called me today telling me he couldn't be there, and we talked a little bit about that, and he was in front of the sewer commission recently for something, and yeah, they're kind of opposed to sewering a lot of this, I guess, and but
The selectmen are against sewering 3A?
No, I think the sewer commission might be.
Okay.
So yeah, certainly
Wow.
both sides, both near our station and the Situate station, we have sewage issues, obviously. So that's why I think you have to zone for a little more than 43 acres on the nose. But
Well, whether the sewer capacity or not, is that a factor in the state's housing choice qualifications?
Yeah. I guess they're not telling us that you have to throw considerations of wetlands and septic systems out the window. They're still going to be subject to that. So we have to have the appropriate zoning to allow it to happen, and taking all those things into consideration. The other practical problem to this future development, if you look at all these properties, none of them are big by themselves. So some developer has to come in and spend a lot of money to string together a bunch of properties in order to get a property of the minimum size necessary to build.
Well, again,
it's not going to, we're not creating. Yeah, I'm just saying we're not necessarily by doing this saying that this is all instantly going to happen, but we just have to allow for the possibility.
But philosophically, I really think that would be the point of this discussion. It seems to make sense to me to find a minimum path to comply with the housing choice requirement, whatever that minimum path is, including Avalon and that hillside Situate Hill on the north end of 3A. If we can comply, I don't really think it makes sense to have a whole huge potential growth scenario to the citizens of Cohasset, but I think there's a minimum approach, and then maybe the overlay district could get expanded. And that might be the philosophical way to start this. What do you think?
Well, I'm offering up the potential land. I'm not saying we should do it all. I do think we should split it between the two stations. The rule there is we have to have at least, if we do multiple zoning districts, we have to have at least 50% of it in one. So a town that might be looking at 3 stations and 3 locations, they have to put 50% of the zoning in with one of them. This is easy for us because we just have the 2 stations to deal with, and we can do that. The question is where are we going to draw the lines? And some property owner going to get pissed if we keep them out and that kind of thing. So the other thing about this is that when the judge and I spoke about this before town meeting, this and some other issues, she thought it would be very wise to get policy direction from some of the other boards, not work on this on our own and present it to them in September. So to that end, I've asked for this particular issue to be on the planning board's agenda for Wednesday. I'm going to ask the select board and the Affordable Housing Committee to get on their agenda, so that at least as a group, we have a consensus of whether we want to do a minimalist approach and put just the minimum amount of properties we need to do it to get compliance, or do we perhaps be a little bit more expansive and give.
Well, what would be the different pros and cons of each?
Well, I think the ultimate thing is the feasibility that even if we zone for it, for example, is there going to be somebody like either the north end of the town or the south end of the town? They're going to take a number of these small properties and string them together into a new development. That's what's going to happen. We don't have, I think it's minimum 5 acres and then it's 15 units an acre, which is super dense. So we have to talk about height for these types of projects in a minute. But I think to me, the practical thing is that we're not going to see a lot of this because of what people have to spend to string together a number of properties.
Tom, it's an overlay. It's an
Yeah, no,
overlay district, right?
we can
still
do
keep the underlying zoning.
correct. So what we can do is we can do it by overlay. We just have to make residential as of right. We can encourage mixed use, but we can't mandate mixed use. And so one of my policy question is, would we consider a further density bonus if a project was mixed use? Because particularly with what's going on coming down the pike financially for the town, as we heard at town meeting, we don't want to kill our commercial tax base as small as it is.
We still want to have a commercial tax base
and
relative to residential, but the money's always been in the residential growth, right?
Yeah. We're like the statistics Chris put up the other night, it's been the same for like 25, 30 years now, that we're roughly 7% commercial and 93% residential.
But just about every village project has presented as much residential as possible and as little commercial as possible, because the numbers are clear. That's what works. I mean, the old colony mixed use project, what a great project. I mean, they actually were the ones that asked for a TOD, and I think at the time we were like, what's a TOD?
Yeah, no, that was a friendly project.
But that thing the commercial space sat there for, I mean, it was a bad time, right? It was like 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
Tough time for renting out space, but I think the New Jersey developer had deep pockets and they held out, but the
units
got leased up. I heard immediately.
Yeah, that was pretty fair. And
you can
see it at the Stop and Shop Plaza that the new buildings commercial is taking some time to rent out.
It's tough. It's a tough market because you don't have the traffic counts. Remember that study that was done back in 2005? Everybody was like, why don't we have a Staples here? Why don't we have a Macy's? And the consultant was like, big box doesn't work here. It's all small boutique kind of specialty.
No credit.
Environment.
So anyway,
but I think there's a minimum that we would want for mixed use. And whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20%, I'm not sure. But even if those units aren't as profitable, I think we still want to talk about what the right number is, because we don't have a percentage number for the village. And I think I've always been surprised whenever we get a village project, a little commercial project is offered up.
Well,
I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but I guess disappointed.
The village zoning requires it, and we've only said first floor only.
It requires it, but it doesn't set a minimum. I mean, we had the same problem at the harbor.
Yeah, well, the harbor
wanted to give us nothing.
Yeah, I know. And the harbor, the overlay district was even less in the commercial requirement.
And we talked about it extensively when we were doing the zoning bylaw. Well, should we put in a percentage? Well, we made this assumption that the parking was going to be underground instead of next to the commercial space. And it was for me, it was a disappointing zoning exercise.
Yeah,
I would want to take that into consideration when we do this overlay for our housing choice.
all right, so let me, again, we can debate forever. I just want to
No,
get.
no, I just wanted to.
No,
discuss
and
it. It's not
I
a
just want
debate.
to, I wanna-
I just wanted to bring up what I think it's a salient point for mixed use.
yeah, so anyway, let me just, let me stop this share and go to the other share a minute. Where is it? This one. All right, so can you see this?
Not yet.
You can't. Uh-oh. Share screen. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Now can you see that?
Yes.
All right, so just so you know what I was looking at, the station is here where the cursor is.
Yeah.
And I identified on that list all these properties. I think the highest one on King Street was number 166, maybe. So I identified, I think there's Situate Hill. I identified some of these too, and like these Rose stores here, we might want to take those out of the consideration, and then.
Because they're okay. They're okay as is.
Yeah, I mean, they're useful retail businesses, and here's Avalon, so there's no reason I thought there was an impediment to us adding Avalon. If we can add it, I'm just not sure. I think the impediment is not adding the property, but whether those units are going to count toward it. But
Well, I think we talked about it with Lauren, and she said they could count.
all right, well then, if that's the case,
But
I
the
would
southern
certainly.
side, the southern end of Avalon is where they can expand.
Yeah, so I would definitely include Avalon. So now when you get down here, here's the Shaw's property, it's 739. And I think that the property they also own is a 765, 773, and perhaps 781.
And 274 is the big part.
This is this is Wayne's part. So
yeah.
So again, with the half mile thinking, I didn't include Shaw's in it, but we could. But then, down in this line, I kind of identified all of these properties through here. Marion Way, number 7 is commercial zone, number 15 is residential zone. In Wayne's property, you don't see the zoning line, but it's roughly right through here, almost through the middle. So this side is highway business, this side is residential. We probably have to include the whole property, but his intent, from what he told me, was just to build on the highway business part. He's just got an access issue to deal with.
So Tom, with the housing choice program, would the units count under the affordable housing SHI numbers?
That's a good question. I don't think they are. But
wow.
Lauren can clarify that, but they got it. That's a problem that I don't think they've answered the question for.
Okay, you mean
so for tonight's purposes, I do want to include the select board and the planning board and the Affordable Housing Committee in helping us with these policy decisions, because writing the bylaw and identifying the parcels that would be in it is not hard. This new statute is 2 paragraphs. So I drafted a bylaw, it needs work. One thing I was thinking about, it should have.
Did you use the example as a?
I read over their example. They didn't. The state's guidance on this is not so much a bylaw in bylaw language. It's more like guidance of things you need to include and not include. But it'd be real simple, and it would be, then you'd have to plug it into the table of uses and create the uses for this overlay, and then you'd have to plug it into the dimensions that it would have, unique dimensions, into table 5 in the area.
Tom, what is the cell, by the way? Can you in a sentence or two?
What is the cell?
What did we get for creating this overlay district with the potential for 640 units?
It's what we don't get. There's certain discretionary grants we won't get, but
I think I read about they could take away funding for the Cohasset Housing Authority stuff.
Yeah, that's the most serious. I mean, a lot of the grants, and I know that the there was discussions about this when this first came up a year ago, because there was a sentiment amongst one of our other officials on another board that said, well, we don't get these grants, why bother? But then came the thing is that with
It's
this other
punitive.
town, yeah, that they can get punitive on our housing authority.
Yeah.
Um,
I know.
so, you
I
know,
have read
it's
about
just,
that.
yeah, it's just something as a society, you know, we're being compelled to do, but so we need to do it.
And none of the
Um,
units would count. I mean,
Well,
Avalon.
we gotta clarify, whether the units count,
Yeah.
but, I thought
It's
there
that
was. an issue.
percentage, right, Tom? I think it's what, more than 25%?
Um, I know we can apply our inclusionary zoning bylaw too, and I think that might be all we can do. But we'll have to clarify that. I'll ask Lauren, clarify, 40B eligibility, so.
Oh,
So I guess
40B eligibility. Yeah, so 40B.
what I'd like to come out, at least in the location of this district, is a consensus amongst us that we agree with an overlay approach rather than a separate.
I just think
district.
that 40B, Tom, I think that allows you to go what? You might know Clark, but like up to 8 feet, 8 stories. So,
Yeah, 40B, you get to waive zoning requirements. That
Yeah,
would be
40B, you can do
height,
whatever you want.
and so
setback.
we could either be a friendly 40B. I don't think anyone could really stop us if they go through the other state requirements, but the friendly 40B is if we.
Well, this wouldn't be 40B. None of these projects would be 40B
All right.
projects because we're allowing it as of right. And, all right, so
But they
I
would,
guess-
but inclusionary zoning still would apply because it's
I believe it
townwide.
would, yeah. I believe it-
That's 10%. What about requiring rental instead of,
No, we
or
can't do,
requiring 20% or
We can't-
requiring
we-
buy downs or
no.
that kind of thing?
we can't do that. We can't do anything that would restrict families. So we can't Avalon by agreement agreed to do everything at 2 bedrooms when they originally wanted a mix. We can't do that. So we have to allow 3 bedrooms. We have to, for family, we can't do anything that would be perceived as discriminatory against families renting.
So the point is housing diversity, or that's the
Yeah,
housing choice
Yeah, I mean, we can go
moniker
rental.
is all about.
Yeah, we can go rental owners, I suppose, but we can't mandate one over the other, but,
Tom, what about loosening the restrictions on sizes of units?
well, again, that's what our zoning is going to determine.
Well,
And it
yeah, no,
has
I'm just suggesting it, like maybe that's something we think too that creates more flexibility,
Well, hold on. So anyway, you've seen it. Let me. just
Tom, you
focus
need a 12-acre minimum per parcel, so people would have to join parcels.
You think you need a 5-acre minimum at
5 acre?
15, and then you do 15 units an acre. Situate Hill, for example, is 8 acres. They could get, I remember
well, and that's buildable too, right? And didn't we?
yeah, well,
Tom,
that's, again,
it's all those wetlands.
yeah, none of this is changing the impact of wetlands and wastewater treatment. So let me close this again. Let me go back to the document, this one. So, oh, I'm sorry. I'm flipping it on my screen without putting it on your screen. All right, so the other thing. All right, well, so let's just do one step at a time for me to organize it in my head. Number one, we all agree I need to talk to the other boards to get an overall policy direction of where the town wants to go with this. That's number one. Number two, can I
Tom,
say?
sorry, can I just ask what did we submit? Wasn't there a deadline of what we had to submit to the
Yeah,
state?
it's very cursory. It had no
Preliminary.
level of
Preliminary.
detail, no level of detail of defining areas. So
Actually, it had a little
Lauren-
bit of proposed areas that were
Lauren did-
submitted with the action plan.
Yeah, Lauren did that.
yeah,
Right.
we're in compliance with the moment, but we have to come up with something by the end of the year. So.
By the end of next year.
So Tom, I mean, I still highly recommend that we look at what the minimum would be to comply as a baseline. And can we talk about that? I mean, Cassie, what do you think? I just think we have to comply.
Well, I just don't know what
can
is
do
the
to
feeling.
comply,
the
and then
overall
it can always be
community- What is
expanded.
the overall community feeling? Like, are we trying to just meet the minimum because of schools and infrastructure, or are we trying to open this up? I just don't know the
Well,
community.
again, that's one of the reasons why I have to go to the select board, the planning board, and get more of a consensus. But on this
Yeah.
committee,
Yeah.
if I go to these and I say, okay, bylaw committees started to discuss this, and we're of the consensus at the moment that we should just do the minimum amount we need to meet the 638 and 43 acres. Okay, that's fine. And then we can identify properties that we think would comply with that.
Well, you can always expand as the program evolves, right?
Yeah, we can, sure.
I
We
mean,
can always, we
even
can always
40B
expand the overlay.
even 40B in 1969, they did this thing and it has evolved over 50 something years.
Right. So, as part of the bylaw that we would have to pass with it. So, you know, blah, 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 what it is, what we're doing. It would list the parcels that are in it. You know, so we do have to identify the uses that would be allowed under Article 4. And then we'd have to do dimensions. And so forget what the village says about the size of units. That's the zoning for the village. We would have to do that ourselves. And so in this thing, if you've read it, scouted out, proposed a whole bunch of dimensional regulations, although not the size of units. So that still needs to be addressed. But, we can say that the minimum has to be 100 and the maximum this, but again, I have to look back at the regs. We have to be careful about being too restrictive. That can't be interpreted in such a way as that we're restricting families. So to restrict a unit size, for example, to 2,000 square feet, that might say, well, you're restricting it to you're restricting families. So,
well, I mean, is the goal worker housing like 40B? Is it?
no,
Is it having smaller units and more?
No,
units, like, for
it's
example?
having a diversity of mixed unit housing units for
Well, hey,
single
Tom,
people as well as families.
have you been over to the former air base and seen the development over there?
Some of it, yeah, I've driven through it a number of times.
Maybe we should take a trip.
I
over
have,
there.
it's great. That outdoor space is awesome. But the retail space is vacant, I think.
Yeah, right. It's killer.
Yep.
But they
Yep.
have single family houses on 2,500 square foot lots. They, they don't have much setback. But building code wise, you only really need 10 feet before you get into serious fire rating issues. But they really pack them in, and
Yeah, and that
with
property,
different housing types, townhouses and
yeah,
single
but
family
that
apartment
house,
building.
that site was developed that way with its own zoning separate from the 3 towns.
Right, I know, but it's a perfect full-scale model for us to take a look at whether we can have different housing types or whether we're imagining a big mega building. I mean,
Yeah, that's a good idea, Clark, because even Woody and I, Tom, remember when we dug up that town in the Cape or that community in the Cape that had like micro single family houses or something? It just helped differentiate, something to look at. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I know, but that's not what this is going to be. This
Oh.
is not going to be zoning to allow for micro houses.
well, wait a minute. I mean, the whole the concept of pocket neighborhoods. This seems to be set up to create. We will be creating neighborhoods on some of these sites if they actually come to fruition, and thinking about the density and different scales of housing and the mix is an important thing. I don't want to think about this as the monolith, because pocket neighborhoods have so many advantages, or cottage.
Yeah, I understand that, and I don't disagree, but
for the
that's not what this, at 15 units an acre, that's not what this is.
Yeah, no, it can be, Tom. I can send you an example.
All right, that's
Send you an
fine.
example of stuff that looks great that can have the same density. and they're real neighborhoods instead of monoliths. And I think, there's so many advantages to the pocket neighborhood concept. I'd like you to think it over.
No, that's all right.
And help me sell it.
Well, here, I gave you the two things. See this second link, the guidelines? That's the new state of the art on their guidelines. So that's what we have to comply with, is that I'm reading down my notes. We can't say anything about the sizes of the units.
Okay, but
we can mandate a mix of 1, 2, 3 bedroom units. We can mandate the kind of mix we want, but we can't restrict one over the other.
But we could zone for pocket neighborhoods as opposed to the monolith.
Perhaps.
Remember that building concept that guy came up with for Dowd's old property next to the golf course? Remember that thing? It was like a 50-unit 3-story building in a flood zone.
Maybe I do. The new one across from State.
I can't hear you, Tom.
Was it the new one that just got proposed, the friendly 40B?
Yeah, it's like 6 months ago or whatever it was. Yeah, the 3-story monolith. I mean, I don't think we necessarily want to zone for that. If that happens, okay, but in some of these areas, I think the pocket neighborhood concept is really great for the housing choice.
All right, well, then if we go that
option.
direction, my guess is twofold, is that we'd have to incorporate far more than 43 acres into this, number one. Number two.
No, not necessarily, but just in terms of like, if in your thinking and the preliminary thinking about this, I think we should avoid the monolith type of building.
I get it, but the monolith is what the state is throwing down our throats.
Are they?
Yeah, we have
You
to
sure?
zone for 638 units. And we have to devote a minimum of 43 acres to that, and that works out to 15 units an acre.
Okay, well, let's find a better way that create real housing diversity.
I think what we should do very preliminarily is take that to DHCD and see if that would even fly, because I'm not going to spend a lot of energy going down that road only to be turned down by the state when we pass a bylaw. So they at that seminar I was at in Worcester a couple of weeks ago, they made it very clear that they're open for discussion, questions and answers, because they realize it's all new and they realize it's a shock to a lot of towns. And well, so if you want to conceptualize that and put something in writing that we can send an email to them, I'd be more than happy to.
I'm sending you an email right now.
Okay.
I'll send it to everybody.
I mean, we should find that out once.
Well, we can get the density we want without a monolith.
Right. So now the other things that have to go along with the bylaw. And by the way, this housing choice warrant article will be voted on separately, even though it affects Articles 3, 4, and 5, because it gets to pass by a majority vote, not by a 2/3 vote, like other zoning articles. That's the other thing the state said. So we do have to think about the uses, and I think these are pretty innocuous uses. And then we have to think about dimensions. And I threw in a bunch of them. And as you know, during the discussion about the height bylaw, the height definition, the Affordable Housing Committee folks came up with the idea that they thought the definition would be restrictive of multifamily housing. So that again isn't the definition, it's the number of 35 feet. So we do have to consider the way this zoning is forcing us towards the monolith is, to consider a much higher height for these buildings in this district. And then I hope, again, I thought about today about hope we can add a sunset provision so that this zoning goes away once we hit the target, once we hit it. Once things are actually built, the zoning goes away, but we'll see what happens with that.
I just think it makes sense to have a concept in our heads that's compelling, that it will help, but minimize the impact on the community.
All right.
schools.
When I,
and-
when I go, well, Clark, you'll be at the discussion at the planning board, but when I go to the select board and the Affordable Housing Committee on this, please, anyone who wants to join me, because we need to get everybody on the same page as the direction we go before we write this. Writing it, once we decide it, writing it will be, I think, fairly easy, but it's what we want to go for.
Yep.
And on the separate track of that, given what the guidelines currently say, we can create an email to DHCD and say, hey, what if we did this? And we encouraged, you know, micro housing or pocket neighborhoods, however the phrase you want to use it, as an alternative to us zoning for a bunch of high rises in a town that doesn't have high rises. Their problem, one of the problems with this, we've talked about a number of times, is that they have right now, it's still a one size fits all for
Yeah.
all different kinds of
Right.
towns.
The depth of thinking, what they're doing in Quincy right now is not appropriate for Cohasset. And
Right.
a lot of people are gonna be like, what? Expanding more, 640 units? Everybody drops their jaw.
Yeah, no, it's not
And-
gonna go over well, but we, you know, if we can,
Okay, but you know, again, I sent those to email via
Okay.
email to everyone on the committee, and I take a look at them so we can
Yep.
talk about it, because
all right, well.
I think a picture's worth 1,000 words in this case.
The agenda for the next meeting.
So we could go through those, go through the density, and make a compelling argument how it's not as bad as it could be.
Right. No, I
But
think
if you have the forms and shapes and density in your head, going in, instead of thinking of the generic monolith, I think that really helps make things
all right.
make
Well,
sense.
I think we need to clear that with DHCD sooner rather than later, so we're just not wasting time on something.
Yeah,
that-
maybe, maybe
Okay.
Tom, we could sit down together sometime and take a look at these,
All right.
studies.
I am still gonna run it by the planning board at least on Wednesday, because we have the time to do it, and
Yeah, do you want me to pull these up and share my screen? I mean,
no, let me get through the rest of it, and then maybe we'll go back to it. I don't want to hold up
Do you think
everybody.
this is I was just gonna ask your opinion. Do you think it's something I need to talk to Jack about reclusing myself, if it's appropriate? I don't know if he's changed his mind on that, but he was pretty specific before, so I just don't want to
About
overstep.
what? About what?
Why?
About being a part of kind of more like the commercial mixed use side of zoning.
Cassie, what you need to stay out of is
Just
substantive,
downtown?
I think substantive decisions about the village. And if you're gonna bring up the Mathnasium property, I think you brought it up, we can, but no, honest to God, that's where, you know, I just did the new ethics training that we all have to do every 2 years, and these are the kind of specific examples. You can't have any self-interest about your own property or anything related to family. So, you know,
All right,
you can't sit here and advocate for us that your father's property should be in the new housing choice district. Other
no,
people can.
I assumed it wasn't in there because of that.
No,
reason.
no, I don't think otherwise you're fine. Now, when we get to the village, you know, first of all, nobody's made any proposal. Well, one person has made a proposal about something new for the village, but from the working group through this group, nobody's made any suggestion of changing the zoning in the village. So I don't think conflicts are going to come up. Your project is now permitted. That also takes away some conflict issues for you. So don't, you know, I will warn you if you're in a conflict situation, believe me. So
Okay.
Discussing this has got nothing to do with your project downtown, and the zoning for it is going to be different than what the village zoning is. So.
well, also, Tom, generally, speaking, having the depth of perspective of what it takes to put a project together, helps.
Yeah, that part is valuable. You know what it's going to take, Cassie, for somebody to come in and buy up a number of these properties and string them together to do a project. So
Yep.
again, we don't have to see that this actually happens, and it may not be feasible for those reasons that it won't happen, but we have to zone for it. So we just got to make smart decisions on how we do it and where we do it. So all right, well, we'll go forward. We'll just we'll open this discussion up again the next time, and hopefully you'll get some feedback, maybe from a couple of other boards about what their thoughts are on the subject. The next is, I wanted to let me close this. Share screen. Cassandra, can you bring up the zoning map? The color, which I can never find on the town website anymore. I always get directed to this Muni mapper.
Yeah, I've had to bookmark all of these town.
Oh, there it is. Look at it, and it's beautiful full color. Okay. So,
And that's the latest and greatest. That's 2021.
This is the 2021 version. And if you're ever looking to find it, it is on the Planning and Zoning Office page.
let's try, can we zoom it so we can see the little inset at the bottom of the harbor? Let's start with that.
Down here,
Yeah, please.
sure. Might take me
All
a
right.
minute to just kind of shift
Oh,
it.
that's right. Oh, there we go. All right. So the discussion of this goes back to, what's the green? What's the yacht club over there, by the way? Oh, no, that's, oh, wait a minute, the green is,
Residence C, I believe.
that's Residence C, right? Okay, what is the yacht club? Can we scroll where the yacht club is?
Do you want me to go over?
Yeah.
Like, you want me
no,
to
that-
find this on the map?
Yeah, the yacht club is outside this inset. It's on the bigger map. I'm sorry. The yacht club is Residence C as well. Okay. All right, so go back to the inset. We just zoom on that for a minute. So one of the thoughts going back to the working group was we have all this different kind of zoning down here. We've got this blue is waterfront business. Got waterfront business there. The land side of Elm Street, the commercial buildings are actually still downtown business, which the village used to be. And then we have residents, I think this green, the marsh and the town landing is open space. Yep, open space. The marina was created as light industry, and I thought that the Haggerty property was in that, and then the marsh going out here was RB. Government Island is where? Government Island is right here, right? That's considered Residence C. All right,
In open space.
and open space. So
Town,
the
or
thought,
town owned, yeah.
yeah, so the thought is to take all these commercial properties along here that are now waterfront business, and then down here as well, and make it all waterfront business. And just carry over the uses. So the overlay would disappear under that scenario.
When you say here, like you're pointing with your own clicker, you mean from the cove all the way to?
Yeah, so
Graduate
here,
is-
yeah, here in the
is
cove,
Marina.
right, here in the cove in the hotel site is waterfront business. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, it's my clicker. I'm not controlling the screen, I'm
You
sorry.
are controlling the screen.
No, I'm sorry.
As
And
if
then,
you are, as if you are.
I'll point with you.
Just
and then
describe,
across the street from it, that red area is downtown business or orange
the
area.
orange, yeah. That's
then
the
the
region,
The cross hatching is that it's all now in the overlay
Overlay.
district. And then you go down to the Atlantica site, is that other blue, that's waterfront business, and then the Lobster Pound and the old boatyard, that's waterfront business in blue, and then the purple at the end of Parker Avenue is light industry, which makes 0 sense. So the thought was to make all of those commercial districts just into waterfront business for simplicity's sake, and the uses would be, be quiet. The uses would be those that are allowed in the waterfront business district. But then the question becomes, do we add anything to that district? Now, the thought has been is to keep the Oaks as Residence C out, to keep the Bellarmine property as Residence C out. Maybe bring the yacht club in only to ungrandfather its use.
Tom,
We-
you worked on this concept, I think for like the last decade. I remember you did a rewrite.
Yes, when the Harbor Committee was reformed, like 2014, I offered something up.
Yeah,
And
I remember you worked on that.
Yeah, there was what I called basically a harbor district, but then I had sub-districts within it. But the
Right.
idea, sub-districts can be done, but it's more confusing. So we
Yeah.
can put all the uses we want on these waterfront properties. So essentially, it's putting all these waterfront properties into what would be a new waterfront business district. I would call it the harbor district.
Sure,
The-
but
the
what would
da-
be I mean, the question I have was, there aren't very many parcels that you could do anything with
Correct.
now.
Correct. Right now, it's just to get rid of the polyglot and have us.
I mean, it's nice to clean up zoning and have uses that are that match up with current zoning. But in terms of, it seems to me that the parcels that are in play are really, it was Atlantica, but now that's not in play, and now because it's being
No.
redeveloped.
Right. There's
Really just
nothing.
the old boatyard and the Trendowitz site. Those are the really the only parcels that anybody can do anything with at this point.
Well, yeah, and we're going to probably see something on the boatyard site. I
Right,
think
I
soon.
just said the boatyard, meaning the old boatyard lobster pound site in the industrial zone for Trendowitz.
Right.
Those
Can you
are
go to the wider
parcels
map?
that anybody's ever gonna do anything with, right?
No. So again, it's
Is
mostly
there something missing?
no, it's mostly a housekeeping to clean it up and putting all the waterfront properties into it.
Okay, well
And
then, for
the
those
yacht
two,
club, I would consider adding the yacht club only because it is an institutional use or a club use. That would be, if it isn't already, it's an allowed use in the waterfront business, and it would be, and so it would ungrandfather it. because
Tom,
it's-
what about, I mean, I still don't see necessarily the need for the consolidation, but what about the concept of a waterfront business overlay district around the whole harbor, with the underlying existing uses? Have you thought about that?
Well, we don't need an overlay if we just call it.
I know, of course, yeah, no, I get it.
But in this concept too, the current overlay would disappear, would be,
But do we want to encourage more waterfront business uses
well,
like
that's
that
the next,
existed 150 years ago
well,
until
that's the next
50 years
step.
ago?
That's the next step. So in this consolidation is just to clean up the map and have the single district rather than multiple districts, but it would, I'll call it what my idea is, the harbor district. It would have the same uses as today's waterfront business district. Okay. Which is all commercial.
Right,
Never has been residential until we allowed the overlay. Now,
but isn't it a priority for the southern end of the harbor, where those are the two parcels that are in play are the Boatyard, Lobster Pound, and Trendowitz Marina? Those are the only parcels that really need
I
zoning.
understand that, but like,
Nothing else needs zoning
Oh.
attention. I mean, what
it's
is
not
the
a question,
vision for
it's not a
those?
question, we don't always have to be responding to a problem. It's a question
No,
of
I'm not saying that. It's just that, you're addressing
we have
the
5
harbor,
districts.
and there's nothing's gonna happen anywhere but those two sites.
I understand that, but we have 5 districts on the waterfront when we only need 1.
I know it might seem messy, but who cares? What difference does it make?
A lot of
It's
people.
all
Can you
existing
recall David's-
conforming.
Didn't David bring
Anyway.
up a concern? David, one of our public, he's the first one, we brought up a concern. on
Who's
commercial
that?
zoning.
Can't really hear you.
Can't hear you,
Kathy.
whoever. Yes.
Do you remember one of the concerns that David brought up on one of the public forums about commercial zoning? I just can't recall. I'd have to go back notes.
Well, we have parking problems, that's one thing. Well, let me get back to this for a second. So
What would be the goals for those two parcels?
the goals wouldn't be any different than they are now. It's, again, it's
No,
the
no
use,
goals in terms of
the-
a planning perspective?
the uses would be the same. Again, Amy and I participated in something this afternoon about climate resiliency, and, you know, they are subject to floodplain regulations and things. So there's certain uses that are prohibited because of the floodplain regulations. But the consolidation is just a cleanup process. The more substantive question beyond that, whether we leave it alone or that, are two things. Number one, on the uses, do we expand the ability for mixed use? And I will tell you that I had an inquiry about the Oaks property seeking to extend the overlay district to the Oaks property. Yeah, well, but here's the other
Of
thing.
course. Hey,
Of
you gotta
course.
pay for the 18 million somehow, right?
Of course, but you know,
Just chop it up.
and I will tell you that the thinking of the consolidation was not going to include the Oaks and not going to include the Bellarmine property, both of which are still our residency and would remain residency. However, even under residency, you can do more than one unit if you have, you know, again, the wastewater treatment, and you have the land, and the Oaks certainly has the land to do more than one unit. So
I think Oaks could have
the Oaks is in, the
7
Oaks is
conforming sites.
the Oaks is in play whether we change it or not.
I mean, I saw a couple of preliminary plans that other developers did about 10 years ago for the Oaks.
Somehow got redeveloped into an office building at one time. But and then the other issue for the harbor is, that was discussed for a long time, is the height. Because the height in the harbor on the waterfront properties has to account for base flood elevation. And so the bottom point is higher than just the, you know, sea level. And it didn't account for it in the overlay bylaw. And so we have.
We did. Yeah, we did.
Well, no, you didn't, because it's still 35 feet above base flood elevation.
Right, we used the ground plane as base flood. But if
it's not,
that
and that's,
wait a minute, if that overlay district got extended to Atlantica, then the base flood elevation, since that's a velocity zone, would be 7 or 8 feet higher than.
no, I know that. That's why he didn't build up.
That,
That's why he's just rehabbing the existing building. Because
well, he didn't have the underlying zoning that would allow him to,
well, if he tore it down, he'd have to go up higher too, so.
but it's not in a, anyway.
Anyway, so again, this is the thoughts on the harbor. And again, this is an issue that I think needs a wider consensus of the select board, the planning board, and the harbor committee to, you know, what thoughts they have for the future of the harbor. I know.
So how does this fit with the harbor plan?
That's why I want to speak to the harbor committee. I'm not up on the ins and outs of the harbor plan.
Well, take a
I
look
mean,
at,
personally, I don't think we should expand mixed use in the harbor. And, but if the Oaks and the Bellarmine property are left as zoned as they are on both properties, there is the potential of multifamily use there because residency zoning can allow for it.
yeah.
Um,
But I'm not really for more development on the harbor. I think I'd love to see more waterfront uses in those two parcels that are still in play.
yeah, well,
To me, having the underlying zoning not match up with what's hey, I gotta go check on the kids. I think they're ripping each other's eyes out. But you know, I still think the focus should be on those
yeah,
two
no, I
parcels.
think an increasing public access should be
Yeah,
added
yeah.
to the uses.
And having real waterfront uses, continued, expanded, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like the marina could be a boatyard.
All right, the other things about zoning districts. On 3A, we have what? What are these purple things? Light industry? I can't read
Yeah, I
that.
believe so.
This is,
I
no,
have
this
to
is
zoom
tech,
in a
this
little
is,
bit, but
yeah, one of them's light industry, one of them's
technology business is
Technology
the
business.
darker purple.
and we have highway business down here, and we have highway business up north. Again, we haven't had any technology business developed. Which one is this? Is this the TOD site or, no, that's not.
This,
No, this one, the one on the other side of 3A. What is, oh yeah, that's the TOD site right here. The light purple. So again, a thought, cleaning things up, making it neat. Just make everything commercial on 3A, one single commercial district with the uses, keeping the uses we presently permit, keeping the exclusions of the uses we don't permit, like fast food and adult sites and adult stores. And just again, cleaning it up. That's a thought there. We still have pockets of downtown business zoning up in West Corner, way up to the upper left corner, beyond next to the yacht club. We still have a downtown business district in Beechwood, which is the smaller of those two parcels down there in Beechwood. The smaller orange one is getting redeveloped as we speak. The rest of it extends up to the creek now. There was a store on that side of the street opposite the cemetery a long, long time ago. My thought about, there is commercial use on the west corner downtown business district. I'm just, again, is cleaning up, not having so many different confusing districts, is I would rezone both of these to be the same as the village district in the village. And perhaps in the Beechwood one, even eliminating some of it. The part on the, I guess, the northwest side of Beechwood Street along Doan Street, heading towards the park, heading towards Wampatuck, right up to the creek. Most of that's residential. Most of it's the cemetery, and most of it's residential, with the remnants of one old commercial use still there that's unused as far as I can tell. Again, just some thoughts to cleaning up our map, and redoing the districts. And, what we did with Article 3 this time was just housekeeping and reorganization of it, but we didn't touch the districts. So those are my thoughts
No
about.
blood.
No, okay, no death. I was just saying that again, as a matter of cleanup and not having so many different confusing districts. The TOD, light industry, and highway business would all be going back to a single commercial district on 3A like we used to have. And then making the
What about
Beechwood.
expanding those down or up?
Well,
3A?
that's an interesting thought, as you see that there's the big residential piece between Beechwood Street and pretty much.
Well, what about the northern district?
Up here?
Yeah, the 3A, expanding that.
Yeah, well,
Expanding the width?
the TOD district and the landfill and the hardware store were all highway business previously. They were designed for something else. The TOD got built, but then it's going to be grandfathered and we'll be there. And we can always carry its uses over back. But I would just get rid of it all and make it all back to highway, whatever. I call it 3A commercial, highway business, whatever you want to call it.
I mean, personally, it's sort of nice to have a stretch of open space and not have a big glot of commercial.
Yeah,
And I think those districts could be denser than they are now. Parking may be an issue, but at some times, but I don't, if they were denser. Interestingly enough, once the Stop and Shop Plaza gets built out to its maximum amount of tenants, it will be interesting to see with the residential component whether parking becomes a problem there, because if I remember correctly, they redid the calc to just meet zoning, not have any excess.
Yeah, well, they have, some of their green space is their overflow. So they would take away green space to add parking. But anyway, again, this is just more of a housekeeping, just instead of having a glut of a bunch of different kinds of districts that are not being used, just go back to making everything the same on 3A. And then the other thought I had, Clark, that it was get rid of the vestiges of downtown business in Beechwood and West Corner and just call that village, and maybe even shrink the Beechwood one.
Well, Merle Brown always would, whenever that got brought up, would always say something about it. I like that there's a little business district in those.
Well, that's fine. And we're,
neighborhoods.
if, I don't know, Cassandra, if you can zoom in that bottom center of this map. here.
Personally, I think the technology business district, I think that was a restrictive zoning that went in as a component of,
It was designed to stop Cohasset Heights landfill.
right.
And that,
And
so-
since it's not necessarily the
Can we scroll up a
goal
little bit?
anymore,
Right. No, so I think we
that,
should
that
just,
should probably be rethought, that whole district.
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I think we should
Yeah.
just go back to making all the commercial areas one district as it once was. I'm sorry, Cassandra, go in the other direction. I'm sorry. Down to the bottom, the very bottom. So in Beechwood, the smaller of those two dark orange areas is the one that's being developed now.
Yeah.
The rest of it is on the other side going up Dome Street, and it's mostly residential. There's one remaining old building that
Right,
used to be commercial that Merle would remember. It's decades old.
sure. And then
And
there's a
I
reason
would,
to do it.
so, bringing the villages zoning to this and just calling it another part of the village district would be consistent with the use that we just permitted on the planning board.
Well,
But I
wouldn't mind if they were consolidated maybe a little bit, or even expanded in a different direction.
perhaps, yeah, I think this part, the part that goes towards Wampatuck and the Bound Brook there, is useless because it's mostly residential. It's either the cemetery or it's residential, so.
Yep.
I almost think about eliminating, but West Corner is mixed use right now.
What about expanding the intersections of, in these neighborhoods? Are there any, is there any place where a residential district, has businesses? I mean,
No.
Robbins at the intersection of Forest and North Main comes to mind.
Yeah, Cassandra, I'm sorry, Cassandra, can you,
Or
we shrink the map so we
What
go up to
about-
there?
what about
Well-
near North Situate?
No, well, Situate is,
Near
right
North
here.
Situate on.
yeah, no, North Situate, the bottom part of 3A from Beechwood South is highway business.
Right, I was just thinking of a different place where you could have a neighborhood business district.
Well, nothing comes to mind. Other than West Corner, which again is downtown business, and I'm just saying it, make it village, so it's the same, so we just don't have so many different districts and bylaws. I know that one person has mentioned to me that they don't like the fact that some of the projects that have been dealt with on the other side of the tracks in the village. And I said, well, when we changed it from downtown business to village, we didn't change the boundaries, and there's no sentiment to change the boundaries, but there's at least one person I know who would like to see it not be any commercial development on the other side of the tracks, the hillside side of the tracks. But that's
Done except one parcel.
targeted at one piece of property, and I don't. think
Yeah,
we can
that's
zone
just
for that.
right, one parcel only.
Right, and I don't think we can zone for that, but, so those are my, the consolidations and reducing the number of these multiple districts, most of which are, some of which are irrelevant at this point. It's just my thought about consolidating.
Well, how do we get to where we are now to something we could recommend on the floor of town meeting in terms of, because I live on North Main Street where there's a 400-foot extension of Residence A. So most of my neighbors have less than the 18,000 square foot required for a building lot.
Where are you? Look, can we go up there maybe, Cassandra?
North Main Street,
You're before Wheelwright, right? So,
well, you can see the line of the
oh,
orange
I see.
Residence
All right.
A, right? So it's the train tracks and then 400 feet off of North Main Street. I mean, I don't know if you'd pick up any building lots if you extended it in some way, in one way or another.
Extending what, Residence A?
I don't think anyone's really looked at where the Residence A and Residence B and Residence C start and stop recently.
Yeah,
I know I haven't had any discussions about it as a part of the master plans,
right. So,
other than acknowledging maybe that could be talked about, and maybe there'd be advantages to changing it or rethinking it. Or maybe it just stays as it is, because that's what
Yeah,
somebody came up with 70 years ago.
what is that orange zoning? Is that all Residence A?
A.
All
Yep.
right. And the yellow is B.
That's
and the
right.
green is C. Okay.
That's right.
So,
But I mean, I'm
I
sure
will
there was
tell you
a
that on the
that
working
happened
group,
70 years ago where those were established, and I obviously wasn't a part of it. But does it still make sense?
well, here's my thought. So in 86, I believe one of the changes they made in 86, which is why I point to 86 as the last time this was ever looked at, is when they changed the areas of the lots to what we have today.
Right.
In the working
And
group,
it went up, right?
it went up. And in the working group, no one has ever brought up the idea of changing any of the residential district boundaries. When we've talked about new
Well, it's
zoning.
complicated, right? It's a
Yeah, and
question.
there's no, I guess the only thought I would have about, some towns, we have 3 residential zoning districts, some towns will have more. In the places that are undeveloped in the town, do we go to an even larger district than C? Lots that, a minimum, I'll just throw out an arbitrary number, 120,000 square feet, where Residence C is 80,000 square feet. As a way of, as we looked, the town in the last 10, 15 years has gone over 8,000 population for the first time. On the working group, we had developed some data that said, I think from 2000, not only do we have data on how much house size has gone up, but how much the population went up. And it's like 16%. We had a spurt after World War II. We had another spurt like in the 70s. And then we had this big spurt since 2000. So, we're over 8,000 now. And with the zoning that we have to do with the multifamilies, we'll hit 9 easily. I mean, a long time ago, I had MAPC tell us that a full build out of Cohasset was like 12,000 people. All right, so then we want to maintain.
What was the Benjamin report?
Oh, I don't know how, that's so long ago. I don't know.
No, I know. It was like
Well, the Benjamin report was big about
12,000 people, I think.
Yeah, but so, when people write on 143 that, oh, we want the town's getting too big, we want the town to stay the way it is. Well, the only way to do that is to zone giant chunks of the town as open space and can't be developed, or make larger lot sizes to, decrease the number of houses. But then you get into potential regulatory takings which would be a very expensive proposition.
Yeah, well, I wonder, you could do that, but I wonder how it would really affect anything, because if a lot's created, then
Doesn't
I'm
that
sorry?
increase people's values?
Yeah, but what it will,
Grandfathered in?
Cassie, we can't hear you.
Can you guys hear me better now?
yeah, that's better.
Just gonna say, does that create more scarcity then, and then people's lots become more expensive because then they're all
think it does,
grandfathered
yeah.
in?
I think that's an unintended consequence, or a consequence of limiting future development by increasing lot sizes.
Yeah,
But,
I'm
but
not,
we're such a tight town with, 46% open space. At this point, I'm not exactly sure what's in play, but there might only be a couple of large parcels that, or areas that could be even subdivided or re-subdivided, that
Yeah.
we might want to focus on those instead of the already, developed areas.
yeah, I'm not an advocate for changing the residential districts. I just think we have to properly warn the town
Well,
that
well,
as our
what about
population.
decreasing the size of some areas, lot size, and increasing others
Well,
as a
the fact that,
balance?
the fact that we have to bring in multifamily in a big way is going to do some of that. I think that what we really have to prepare the town for is, as we're starting a discussion about schools again, is that if we are not going to regionalize and we insist on having our own standalone school system, which is expensive to maintain, and we have more kids, we have to pay for all of that. And we're going to need more school infrastructure. I would be very honest with the town says, I can't stop the growth, and Cohasset is going to be larger than 8,000 people. It's going to probably be closer to 10 at some point. But
It's always going to grow, but it's never going to stop, right? Like every,
it will stop,
every
like,
region.
I
like
mean,
every city in the region, they continue to grow and grow and grow. It's just,
well, it's an
do you
interesting.
do it in a slow, gradual pace, or all at once when the money's there?
You mentioned the 46% open space. I think a lot of people don't realize how much open space is within our borders, because most of
Right.
it is like inaccessible, doesn't have a lot of roads going through it. But
Yeah,
you
it's
look
part of
at, you look at,
part of the discussion, certainly, for
Hull
development.
has probably achieved maximum build out because they don't have any more land.
right.
And I understand their school population is dropping now, and
But they can redevelop. Certainly, I mean,
they
there's
certainly
parcels
can
that are
redevelop.
ripe for redevelopment in Cohasset.
Correct. So
And
I think we just need to be
always
honest
smart.
with people. I think we need to be honest with people's expectations that we're going to have some magic bullets here to keep Cohasset frozen in time. I just don't think it's possible. And
But you can work on right sizing things. I mean,
correct.
it seems a little unfair to do the Dover approach where 5 acre zoning, any new lots, 5 acres. Okay. Well, that's going to do something, but
Yeah, and those 5 acres could be subdivided. Well, maybe not with 5 acres on it, but
we always knew that the village in the out on 3A near the train station were the places for affordable housing to grow.
Yep.
And we reacted zoning wise for those eventualities, and they're working.
yeah, and there's going to be more, and we're going to generate more children and school demands, and that's just it, and the state's mandating this stuff on us, and I wish the state would then allow us to do some more impact fees that would deal with school growth, but they're not going to.
In terms of the zoning map, I certainly think having a roundtable or a forum to look at the map and to see if people know of areas that are problems that need to be addressed,
Yep.
whether the 3 residential single family districts or the commercial districts, maybe make some suggestions and get people to react to them.
Right.
And then, proceed with caution, because anytime you make a change, you take value out of someone's pocket, put it into somebody else's pocket, or other, otherwise.
Cassandra, could you scroll towards Hingham, towards the left of the golf club? I mean, a lot of the golf club takes up such a good chunk, but it was up in here above the golf club off of Lambert's Lane. I mean, that's a part of town that's still not fully built out yet. I mean, we don't have much area that's not been touched by development, that's not fully built out yet.
Right.
There's a few here and there, but
I really think we should focus on those parcels.
well, that leads us to, the study of.
This doesn't,
but
this doesn't necessarily take into account all of the parcels that are under conservation restriction, does it? I mean, I can see there's the dotted lines up at Straits Pond, Residence B. That could be protected open space.
Yep.
Like Barnes, see how that's gridded, even though it's Residence B?
Yep.
There are other parcels that are in, I mean, I'm on the Conservation Trust. I know there's some parcels that aren't shown here as having conservation restriction and open space. They're not developable.
Yeah, we're going,
By the
well,
trust.
we know we have to redo the map when this is all said and done. But I think what we should do here is, again, the harbor is the only one that's a real policy choice because of the uses and the height issue. So float those with some of the other boards, but we should probably, one of our first forums for this go round is have a forum about the ideas of what to do with the commercial districts and then solicit, has anybody got some concerns about the residential districts?
Well, the mapping exercise is a fascinating part of the master plan. And for this particular exercise, it might make sense to get an updated MAPC to do an updated database and make sure we have all the open space parcels indicated as open space, and then really do a deep dive and kick it around some.
Yeah, this looks actually pretty up to date with respect to that stuff, but maybe it's not.
Well,
notice we also have a Residence A over on West Street, or Hull Street, I mean.
That's right, yeah. And there's the bread and cheese parcel off of Forest that the trust owns now. It's like 30 acres. I don't see it here. And we picked up a
Cassandra,
new
can you
one
scroll the other way back towards the center of town?
in the bottom right corner. The boot is just above. I'm the steward of that one.
The bread and cheese swamp is right above the dump, wherever the dump is. Where's the dump?
Well, it's to the left.
I don't know where the dump is at all, so you'd have to
Don't
direct
worry,
me.
yeah, scroll back towards the golf club again. It's near the golf club. Yes, Cedar Street. The dump is, I'm sorry, the other way.
Yeah,
Sorry.
bread and cheese, I think, is further up.
Right there, see below the golf club, and Cedar Street is at the bottom. The two crosshatch areas, one of it's B, one of it's in the golf club. That's bread and cheese swamp. If
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken. So this is fairly up to
I
date.
thought it was further to the north, but I'll look it up. And
Yeah, I think it goes to Straits Pond. I think there's a link to Straits Pond. But anyway, that's a good idea for a forum. Maybe we'll set one up in June to have that kind of public
what
round.
about having MAPC to do some mapping? I mean, because someone has to create the maps. This map was updated by Jason, and he did it efficiently.
Yeah, I think this is good to work with. So anyway, all right, so for tonight, I have some thoughts and notes here. I'm gonna have to turn.
Can you talk into the mic?
I'm sorry, I'm mumbling. I'm saying I took some notes and I want to read Lauren's thing again that she did to the select board about housing choice. Float some ideas with the planning board and see what their thoughts about it, and then I'll try to set up a meeting with the select board once the election's over and the affordable housing committee.
Do you want to talk about accessory dwelling units when there's more people here?
Yeah, I mean, so the next, what again, I'm extremely optimistic that a lot of these things can be dealt with in one night, but when not everybody shows up, it's hard to do that. But and also these things aren't as simple as.
I think the important people are here.
No, I know. I'm just saying that sometimes these topics aren't as simple as I think they might be, but
No, they aren't.
on the next agenda is our discussion about Article 4 and the table of uses. And within Article 4 is the thought of bringing the village zoning article into Article 4 as a form of a use. The accessory dwelling, bringing that into it rather than being standalone articles. Whatever vestiges of the harbor overlay that we have to keep would be brought into that. So that would be the top beginning of a topic for next week for what we're going to include in Article 4. The main focus of Article 4 is, of course, simplifying the table of uses, but the secondary part of it is the actual text of the bylaw. It's long today, and it has a whole list of uses, noxious uses and trailer uses that are prohibited, and this and that and the other. Those would all survive, but this would be where we could start to talk about ADUs. And I think that's a rather simple discussion for us about yay or nay, what to keep it or expand it, I think are our choices essentially.
Well, have you heard, is anyone talking about getting rid of it? I mean, it's useless the way it is now.
No, yeah, I mean, you heard at that forum we had on it that Woody said, if we're not going to change it, then get rid of it. But
Right,
I'm in favor.
It's an unworkable. I mean,
Yeah, I'm in
20
favor
years.
of making it more workable for the single building that it's in. And
I agree.
And I'm in favor of expanding it to detached sheds and garages. I don't have a problem with it at all. So I think that's a rather simple discussion we can have. And, a lot of this may not get put into a bylaw form until the summer, but at least we can make decisions, put things aside. Let's move on to the next topic. And
Well, you also brought up the guest house concept and short-term and long-term rental as a part of your.
Yeah, as part of the defined uses and definitions, I defined a guest house versus a lodging, or a hotel lodging house. These are things that are in our current bylaw too. The short-term rental thing, when did that somebody brought that up? Oh, when we were doing the decision on Cassie's project, it came up in the planning board because we have prohibited it in her project and the harbor project. But the broader question is, like, I saw a thing on 143 today where somebody was looking for a short-term rental for the month of June, I think, or July, because it was two people who I think sold a house and are waiting for the next house to be ready. So short-term rentals would, if broadly defined, would include all of that, and people who do seasonal rentals and go to the winter in Florida and summer here.
Right, or take off for the summer to travel and they.
Yeah, so we have to split hairs about, well, first, the one that everybody objects to and that other towns are prohibiting is the Airbnbs and the Verbos and the home serves of the world.
Well,
can we split hairs?
A lot of people, but they're only a problem when you have like the 100-person party house.
Yeah, and do I guess some of these towns who prohibit them split hairs between, a non-commercial family short-term or seasonal rental versus a commercial rental like that. Interestingly, Nantucket just turned down a bylaw to prohibit short-term rentals. I guess that was last weekend.
Sure.
Nantucket, one of the most litigious towns in the state when it comes to zoning, and you would think they might have prohibited it, but no. Their citizens want to keep the ability to do short-term rentals down there. So,
Well, I think it's because a lot of locals make money off of that, and they say that they need that, right, to support their own.
But
the chances are, if you got rid of short-term rentals, you'd lose half your tax base.
But Tom, it's interesting you said the percentage of people actually showed up for that meeting. Talk about Cohasset. I think theirs was even smaller with the total population, and the population actually showed up for that vote.
which one?
For the Nantucket vote.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what their numbers were.
There was like a whole article of just the amount of what that turned out for town meeting. I think that was even smaller compared to the total population.
Yeah, well, Nantucket's a funny place. It is the most land use litigation comes out of that than any other town in the state, or at least that used to be the statistic. But so when we start the discussion of Article 4 and uses, these are the issues we're going to have to discuss: ADUs, short-term rentals. The overall trend is to go to simplifying categories of uses rather than the laundry list that we have. Keeping, the bylaw working group before, we always suggested keeping the prohibitions on the things we do not want, like adult uses and fast food, but, otherwise giving broad categories so that we encourage retail and commercial use, not discourage it. Woody always brings up that story of that kennel on 3A that had to go to land court to get permitted. And that
It did go to land court. We just had to change the bylaw.
it was just so
And,
insane. It was
to
just so
build the-
insane. Yeah, because
because
I think the
Just
bylaw
didn't have
mentions.
the use variance, which we still don't have, but
Yeah.
we
So,
changed the zoning bylaw to accommodate that
yeah, and I think
operation.
I think we mentioned
took-
2 types of dog uses and not the 3rd type of dog use. It
It
was
took
really,
6, yeah, it was close, but not close enough.
Yeah.
And that therein having somebody who can make a decision based on discretion on what might be a good idea.
I'm in favor, the thing that I drafted is being very simple and broad on this because of the fact that we don't get the box stores and we're away from the highway and, we've all sat through meetings where people have told us, Cohasset, has an ocean on one side, so you don't have the demographics to have big stores. We're in the beggars can't be choosers.
How big? Well, I mean, we do have kind of a captured, market that would support different types of commercial
Yeah.
stuff, but
Right, I'm
specialty
saying
stores,
we should
more
be
specialty.
encouraging, all kinds of retail uses as long as it's, and be specific about what we don't want rather than, to have a micro analysis list of uses and, exclude some things and not others. The funny thing though, even though we are weird because we're near the ocean and everything, is we have 2 supermarkets within our boundaries. That's the anomaly.
People in
normally
Cohasset
we-
gotta eat. Although
Yeah,
we
well,
get
and
a lot of
we-
old people at the Stop and Shop and a lot of Situate people at the Shaws
Yeah.
because they're so close to
Speaking-
their boundaries.
Speaking of Situate too, when we can go back to the housing choice, when we consider development on the south end of 3A, understand that Situate is going to be doing development on its side of the line, close to the station.
On 3A, they're gonna expand their zone. They've been
one
talking
of-
about expanding their zoning district.
Yeah, one of their
Hours.
board members I ran into at that conference out in Worcester, and I think there's already a proposal for a housing units on Henry Bailey Turner Road.
Oh, yeah.
Between 3A and their stations.
A lot of wetlands in that area.
Yeah, but I mean, so, traffic and all that stuff, we have to consider, what the other town's doing as well.
We're still getting a new 3A highway.
Yeah, on the south
No.
end, just before all this development comes.
I don't know if that's gotten postponed or if it's still on track for
Last I heard, it was at
2024.
75%, so. All right, so we made some progress tonight. I appreciate it. Again, the agenda for next meeting will carry over some of these discussions and updates, and then we're going to start the discussion of Article 4. So look at what the judge has written about Article 4 and the diagnostic. Look about what I've drafted, your own thoughts about ADUs.
I did a modification of the ADU language about 5 years ago. Very
No.
simple draft language. I'll send that out.
Yeah, I think that was wasn't it? Yeah, just like one word, because the hangup is that the house.
Yeah, a
can't
couple of
be
words.
changed.
Instead of shall not change the exterior, may.
But
You know,
if we're going to expand it to outbuildings, we got to do a little bit more.
that's the size of it. Well, we can always, we can
We'll
go,
do both. We'll do that to make to not
want to make
constrict.
it functional. If
Right.
it's at all super controversial to have like people's chicken coops turned
Oh.
into ADUs somehow, then
Crap,
then
that
maybe
reminds me.
maybe we just fix it and see what happens. Because it does have certain controls on it that I think are useful.
Oh, shoot.
to
Hold on.
people.
Where's my other stuff? That reminded me of one thing that I added late in the agenda. Hold on one sec.
And take a look at those examples of dense housing and that includes pocket neighborhoods.
All right, yeah, well,
It's
what
it's
you and
it's
you and I,
really great stuff. It's great
you and
stuff.
I are going to craft an email to DHCD to get some feedback. This is the one thing I forgot to put in the agenda when it got written that I tried to add today. So as part of our
Yeah, I took a look at
outreach,
that.
part of our outreach, I wanted to get Jason to put out these survey monkeys or put them on 143, wherever they go. But here's one about I think I had a few of them, but here's one on ADUs. Here's one about the harbor, about the issues we talked about tonight. The frontage and access, not ready for that yet. Short-term rentals is something I think we should put out. Oh, so it's just 4 of them. 4 of them? Yeah, 4 of them. So if the other 2 of you are okay with it, I'd have Jason put out the one on the ADUs, the harbor, and the short-term rentals. The frontage one will come later. That's gonna be the subject of the forum or something. Is everybody okay with putting those surveys out? Start getting some
Yeah,
data.
you know, the only thing is it's a first pass. It's not necessarily, we might have to drill down and based on what the results are and ask
Sure.
more targeted questions.
All right, well, that's why I put it out there for anybody to add targeted questions, but if you're okay with putting this out preliminarily, there's no reason we can't put out a second one. Or a third one, or a fourth one. ADUs.
Yeah, you can follow up on that.
All right, short-term rentals and, all right. The issue about whether we commission any studies, I'll bring that up when we have the wider group. We talked, Amy and I were at a meeting with MAPC that Cassandra set up. There's about a grant application. And we're going to go through it and make this application. And if we were to ever get this grant, we would have help on looking at our floodplain bylaw, our water resource bylaw, and, climate change and resiliency. So get some expert help. In conjunction with Concom wants to do an update of the stormwater regs, and those would all be spring town meeting 2024 targets at the earliest, anything about climate change. We are going to, Cassandra and Montana are going to work on getting that grant application put together. So. All right, we have minutes. I circulated about our meeting on the 19th. You two weren't there, so I don't know that you can vote on them. So I'll leave those aside. It was just our discussion leading up to town meeting, so we'll put the minutes aside. All right, other than that, unless there's anything else anybody wants to talk about, we'll adjourn. And we're going to meet on Monday, the 22nd, the next meeting.
Sounds good.
All right, so Clark.
We have nothing else to add.
All right, and I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you both for coming tonight. Cassandra, thank you as always for your help.
Thank you, Cassandra.
All right.
Absolutely.
Clark, I'll see you Wednesday.
Good night, all.
Good night.